Hello, it's Miss Mason again reading Counting by Sevens by Holly Goldberg Sloan. I'll be reading chapters 9 and 10 today. Chapter 9. Mai and Quang Ha. A leader gets everyone to shoot in the same direction. Nguyen Thi Mai was 14 years old and a freshman at Condon High School, which was on the other side of Bakersfield from where Willow Chance lived. She had a brother named Nguyen Quang Ha, who was a year older. Quang Ha was a troublemaker. Mai was not. She was determined and deliberate in everything she did, and that quality attracted people to her. Mai had true confidence, or, as she liked to see herself, she was born strong-willed, while a lot of the world was wishy-washy. Adults didn't intimidate her, and neither did strangers of any age, because Mai, as her mother reminded people, was born in the year of the dragon, and that meant nobility and power and strength. Starting the second week of class on Thursday afternoons, the teenage kids caught a bus to the school district main offices for Quang Ha's appointment in Del Duke's windowless mobile unit. Mai had the bus fare, a bottle of water, and 2 snacks. Even though she was a year younger than her brother, she had long been his keeper. Mai waited for Quang Ha to have his counseling session, and when he was finished they went together to Happy Polished Nails. This was the salon their mother operated. Mai knew, of course, that she and her brother stood out in Bakersfield. Her mother had been born in Vietnam, from a father who was a black American soldier. Because of this, Mai's mother, who was named Dung, had been an outcast. While the U.S. government gave teenage Dung a chance, she had left home and gone halfway around the world to California. In the next 10 years she had 2 children, with a man originally from Mexico, who had left soon after Mai was born to see his sick brother, and had never come back. Dung had changed her name to Patty once she found out what it meant in English. But even though she had been in the United States for 21 years, some of her mail still came addressed to Dung. Her kids didn't appreciate it. Del had ignored, even more than usual, his regularly scheduled cases. He gave the pest known as Quang Ha a geometric coloring book and commanded that the kid complete 3 pages. Del was surprised to see that, instead of complaining, the hostile teenager actually looked enthused to employ colored pencils to fill in blank spaces. Being careful that no one was watching, Del then got in his car and took off. He had 50 minutes to take care of his business. Del Duke returned to the room without a can of soda, but with a pet carrier. His voice was strangely high-pitched and harsh as he said, "Quang Ha, you should be done by now. I told you to leave at 10 till 4. Quang Ha continued coloring, and didn't even bother to look up. Mai and Willow Chance both fixated on the jail-like front panel of the beige plastic crate, where they saw an extremely large orange cat. Del Duke was insistent. "You have to go. My next appointment is here." Quang Ha kept working on the mustard-colored pencil, as if he was getting bonus money for every stroke. This shouldn't have surprised Del, because the kid was in counseling for not following classroom instruction and having control problems. But Del looked like the one with the control problem. His face flushed deep red, and he put the pet carrier down on his desk as he raised his voice. "Done! Finished! No more coloring!" Willow seemed to be sucked back into her chair. And when that happened, Mai got to her feet. She was some kind of wild tiger unleashed into the airless room. "Don't you raise your voice at us! He didn't do anything wrong. If my brother wants to finish the picture, he'll finish the picture." She took in a deep breath and continued. "He was supposed to have had a counseling session, but you were gone the whole time. That's not right. You are late for your next appointment with this little girl here, and that's not right either. And here's something else to chew on. I don't think you're allowed to have animals on school property. We could turn you in for that." Chapter 10. I felt my blood pressure rise, but in a good way. The exotic-looking teenager standing in front of me was bold. She was yelling at Mr. Del Duke, and the tone of her voice demanded that the world listen as she stood up for her brother and for me. It was there, in the small, stuffy trailer on the edge of the baking-hot blacktop of the Bakersfield School District parking lot, that I found an older girl who was disappointing only in her failure to speak the language of the mostly obliterated Kahula people. I found Mai Nguyen. Del Duke stared at us, but didn't say anything. Instead, he pulled the only rabbit he had out of a hat, which happened to be a cat from a cage. He gave us all a wobbly smile and opened the metal door of the plastic pet carrier. Then he said, "This is my cat, Cheddar. I thought you might like to meet him. So this is my surprise." I had said that my father was allergic to pet hair, which is why I couldn't have a dog or a cat or even a pygmy goat. This was Dell's attempt to please me, to bond. He brought in his cat. It was strange, but right then in that room, what wasn't? The cat took several, in what looked like slow motion, steps onto the desk. I know the cats behaved in this casual way because they weren't needy. They didn't run and greet a person and slobber with joy. They didn't look for validation or recognition. They didn't fetch or cower or make big-eyed faces that said, "Love me, please." Their failure to care wasn't just appealing, but seductive, because cats made you try. We all watched as Cheddar sauntered across the desktop, rubbing his freakishly big body against the 3 shelves of the in and out box, where Del Duke had piled official-looking paperwork that I suddenly felt certain he'd later simply dumped unread in the large storage closet that was behind his desk. The huge cat then took a few sniffs and found the whole place not very satisfying. With no obvious provocation, he leaped down to the floor and bounced right out of the building like a bright-colored, fur-covered soccer ball. We watched as Cheddar hit the parking lot running, and in moments the fat cat had disappeared. For 37 straight minutes we all looked under cars, behind hedges, and around the building of the school district administration headquarters for the missing hunk of Cheddar. But he was not to be found. Del claimed that he felt bad about this, but oddly it seemed that Mai and I felt much worse. Finally, after agreeing to stop our search, we all returned to Del's office to make "Lost Cat" flyers. Del didn't have any pictures of his cat, which also struck me as strange, because from everything I'd read, photographing a pet seemed to be where most animal owners found their greatest joy. But the problem was solved when Kwang Ha drew a perfect pencil sketch of Cheddar, which then served as the centerpiece of the "Lost Cat, Please Help, Reward Offered" flyer. Del wouldn't list an exact reward amount. I believe that economic incentive is crucial as a motivator, especially in a consumer-driven society, but I didn't argue the point. We gathered around the copying machine in the main office and watched together as the image was reproduced. It was here that I was able to identify a new sensation. I have never been part of a true group effort with older kids, and while we hadn't been successful in finding Del Duke's lost cat named Cheddar, I couldn't help but experience a kind of accomplishment as I stood next to the 14-year-old Mai and her surly big brother. I was not pretending to be anyone but myself, and they still accepted me into their troop. I felt human. That was the only way I could describe it. Mr. Del Duke drove us home. He said that he had to take me first, and I assumed that this was because it would be inappropriate for him to be alone with a kid in his vehicle. Parents had to give permission for students to be off school grounds with anyone who works for the district. But I didn't want to raise any red flags, even though that was my signature color. For a moment I drifted off into my head, but not with thoughts about something like cellular structure. I found myself imagining the place where Mai and Kwang Ha lived. Maybe it was a home with a chronically ill relative who was interested in regular examination by a young person, who would listen endlessly to ailments and take precise notes. Or perhaps Mai's family had an apartment with a rooftop deck that housed an amateur self-constructed observatory with a shockingly powerful reflecting telescope. Sitting in the back seat, I wanted to exchange vital contact information with this older and intriguing girl named Mai. In a blink of pure fantasy, I suddenly saw myself walking away from Del Duke's grimy car with a tiny glass vial of her blood sample for genome sequencing. Because even though Mai said during the cat search that her mother came from Vietnam, I hadn't completely given up the idea that she could have something to do with the Kahulas tribe. That was one of my secrets. When I was younger, I imagined I was an Indian princess. Looking out the car window to the street that I'd known my whole life, I understood that origins were so important, even if you didn't know your own. I was energized. Once I was home, I went into the kitchen and fixed myself a drink of hot water mixed with a tablespoon of honey from my backyard beehive and a tablespoon of my own homemade vinegar, made from tart apples, brown sugar, and distilled water. As I sipped the tangy beverage, I was certain that the day, despite the loss of the counselor's cat, had been a triumph. Having a friend, even one who was older and went to high school, would open a door for me into another world. That afternoon, I made a decision. I would learn everything possible about lost cats and Vietnam. It felt as if I were going up and over some kind of barrier after spending too long hitting the thing straight on.